You don't want to be that guy that's got the upper body of Mr. Olympia and is walking around on toothpicks. This video will help you avoid an unsettling imbalance between the muscles of your upper body and your lower body. Hello, my beautiful and shredded scholars. Thank you for joining me. My name is David Shear, and it is a pleasure to have you here. Today we're going to talk about the 7 best exercises for building an aesthetic and athletic lower body. Let's start with a bit of context. Your lower body is the foundation of your physique. You must train your lower body if you don't want to look irresponsible, lazy, and weak. Now that may seem harsh, but it's the truth. All of our power and strength comes from the ground up. The beauty of building an aesthetic and athletic lower body is that it really only takes a few exercises. We will start our discussion by exploring the exercises that I would deem essential, and then we'll finish up our discussion by talking about the more optional exercises that I would argue are optimal if you want to truly sculpt a physique that is aesthetically pleasing and you would like to have the proper proportions from muscle to muscle. To begin, the 3 essential movements that you must train for lower body are first and foremost a squat, a single leg variation, and a hip hinge. This is going to hit most of the musculature in the lower body, and it's going to train a good bit of athleticism. Let's begin with the squat. The squat can take the form of many different exercise variations. We have the simple bodyweight squat, there's the barbell back squat, there's the barbell front squat, goblet squats. There's so many different ways that you can load this exercise. And if you're not able to do bodyweight squats, you can hold onto a countertop or a railing and do assisted squats. The squat in and of itself is training the extension of the knee and the hip joint. This is an extremely athletic movement. It has carryover into everyday life, and it's something that you must train if you want nicely developed quads and glutes. Now, the quads and the glutes are the prime movers of this exercise. There's a little bit of hamstring engagement, a little bit of calves, but primarily you're going to be training your quads and your glutes. That's why I believe it's important to include a hip hinge movement into your training as well. The most common being the deadlift or the Romanian deadlift, where you're emphasizing the stretch, sticking your hips back, and keeping your legs quite straight throughout the movement. This is going to train the hamstrings in a lengthened position, and you can do this hinging movement with either a barbell or you can use dumbbells if that's your preference. Training a single leg variation is essential because it allows us to avoid imbalance within the physique. Think about it. If you're squatting, you may not notice that you're pushing more with your right side than your left. But by using a single leg variation, whether that be walking lunges, whether that be Bulgarian split squats, or simple weighted lunges, you are going to address any imbalances that may arise in your training. Simply put, you'll be able to see if one side is weaker, and it'll allow you to focus on working through that imbalance so that you don't potentially run into injury. Another wonderful aspect of training a single leg variation is the development of what's known as proprioception. Proprio, either way. It's coordination. The more coordination that you have, the more athletic you'll be and the less risk of injury you run with each exercise. So there we have it. Those are the 3 essential movement patterns. We have a squat, we have a single leg variation, and a hip hinge exercise. You can get a lot done. In fact, I would say 75-80% of your strength and size gains are going to come from those exercises. However, if you truly want to achieve a well-rounded physique, it's worth noting that isolations are extremely valuable because a lot of the time we get limited on our ability to deadlift or squat by muscles that aren't necessarily being trained directly. What I mean by this is, let's say you have a heavy squat day. Well, maybe the bar digging into your neck is uncomfortable and that limits your ability to load the squat. Maybe your lower back starts hurting and it limits your ability to load the squat or the deadlift or lunges. Maybe you're having some ankle pain and that affects your ability to load up the quads. Maybe you're having some knee pain and that affects your ability to load the glutes. There are options that we have when we have access to gym equipment that allow us to work around those circumstances and to drive as much progress as possible. When we look at stimulating strength and size development, we need to target specific areas with more volume than others. So by training with isolation style exercises, we can bring up our weak points to balance out the physique as a whole. That brings us to the optional exercises. Now I throw the air quotes there because if you truly want to achieve a well-balanced and aesthetically pleasing physique, you need to include isolation exercises into your training, whether it's upper body or lower body. My favorites to include are seated calf raises and standing calf raises because most people have horrible calves. I mean, I've seen guys that can squat 500 pounds, yet their legs look like the tripod that my camera's sitting on right now. And the reason for that is they have not trained isolation exercises particularly targeted towards that tissue. If we address that early on and develop the habit of training that tissue consistently, it will adapt, it will grow in size and strength. Training your calves seated is going to emphasize a muscle known as the soleus. Training your calves while standing is going to target more of the gastrocnemius. These are two incredibly important muscles because they support the ankle, they support the knee, and they also make your legs look properly developed. If you have pencil legs, it looks weird. Nobody cares if you have massive quads, if your calves are tiny. Most of the time, people aren't going to look at your quads and say, wow, he's got big legs. They're going to look at your calves and go, ugh, dude needs to hit leg day. Train your seated and standing calf raises and add weight, just like any other exercise. Progressively overload to make the most out of your training. Next on the list, we have some form of a hamstring curl. Now, this could be seated on a machine, or you could use a Nordic curl variation. And the reason I believe it's important to implement this into our training is the fact that when you're doing a deadlift, you don't really train the hamstring through any significant range of motion. Most of the time, you are stretched in a fully lengthened position and you're just resisting movement with your hamstring. There's very little contraction. There's very little flexion at the knee that would stimulate strength development through a full range of motion for the hamstrings particularly. So by supplementing seated hamstring curls or Nordic curls into our training, we're going to develop well-rounded strength through a full range of motion and stimulate as much growth in both strength and size in the hamstrings as possible. Pair that with a leg extension variation, and you're going to have some thunder thighs. Leg extensions are amazing because they allow you to train your quads without loading your back. So like I spoke about earlier, if you notice that you have back pain when squatting and heavy deadlifting, back off of the weight and focus more on your leg extensions, because I guarantee you, when your lower back fatigues from squatting, you could still go over to the leg extension and get 1 or 2 solid sets to failure and drive that much more stimulus towards adaptation without continuing to beat down your lower back. That's it for today's video. I hope that this was informative, and I pray that you would put to action everything that you learned today. If you're interested in my free fitness guide, it's called Centurion Strength, and you can pick up a free copy down in the description below. I'm also building out a community of men who are striving to become the strongest in their bloodline spiritually, physically, and financially. If that's something you're interested in, stay tuned for more updates. Be sure to show your support on this channel by leaving a like, dropping a comment down below, and subscribing for more. Turn on those post notifications so that you stay up to date. Until next time, I'm David Shear, and I hope that you have a blessed day.